All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Mini Med School. I can't believe it. It is our final session. And I don't know if Dr. Dillon feels the same way. I'm sure she does as I do, but I'm going to miss doing this. I'm going to miss you guys. Everyone is so great interacting with us, learning with us. We're so happy to see you every single week. So thank you so much for being here with us. Thank you so much for learning about UCSF Fresno. We're always glad to brag about it. So thank you for coming and joining us. We really have appreciated it over these past 6 weeks. So before we get started on our final session, which is going to be a great one, let me go ahead and get some housekeeping stuff out of the way. I'm going to go ahead and, as you may have seen in the housekeeping slides, if you were joining us just a second ago, I went ahead and created a couple of links that are going to be helpful. So if you want to enter the raffle, we hope you do. We just need you to fill out a quick 3-question survey. So I'm going to go ahead and share that link now. So go ahead and fill that out before 6:30 today, because at the end of the program, we will be drawing the raffle. So make sure you stick around. If you want to win and you want to take a great prize, which I will let you know about later, then please go ahead and enter the raffle. So there's that link. And then I'm also going to give you the link for the Mini Med certificate. And I know so many of you have been asking about it. We're so happy to share it with you. But please wait until the end of the program so that you can give us some information on each session and what you liked about each of those. So there's the certificate link there for you. And I will also send that out again after the program is finished. So don't worry if you don't get it now, not a problem. It's going to go in the reminder email that I'm going to send tomorrow, and you can go ahead and fill that out at your leisure, and I will get you your certificate. So I think that's all we have to do for housekeeping. Let me tell you about our program director. You know her, you love her, you've seen her face for 6 weeks, and it's been great. This is Dr. Suki Dillon. Dr. Dillon is an emergency medicine faculty at UCSF Fresno, and a fun fact about the emergency medicine residency at UCSF Fresno is that it was founded in 1974 at Valley Medical Center in Fresno County, and it's one of the first EM programs in the country. Fantastic, right here in Fresno. How cool is that? And Dr. Dillon belongs to that department. Dr. Dillon also works for the Fresno Department of Public Health on various guidelines and protocols in response to COVID-19. And she's so passionate about educating her community that she took these 6 weeks to be with you and actually rushed home from the emergency department today to be our host. So thank you so much, Dr. Dillon. Please take it away.
Thank you, Summer. You're so nice to me every single week. I really do appreciate it. I couldn't have done it without you, though. So this is team effort all day, every day. Well, hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us for the 6th week of Mini Med this year. We are sad that this is the last session, but hopefully we'll see you next year. What I'm going to do is we have 2 great speakers with us today. I'm going to do a quick icebreaker question that we always do, and then I will introduce Dr. Peterson and let him take over the stage at that point. So give me 1 second. I'm going to share the screen. You'll have like very little time, but I'm going to try. Let's see it. Here you go. I am going to, don't look at those yet. Here you go. Full screen. So what is your favorite dessert? I want to know. You know how to respond to these? S'mores, ice creams, cookies. I like it. I'm pretty sure ice cream is going to win. I hope it does. Tres leche, yes. Mochi, perfect. Cake. Actually, it was my husband's birthday yesterday, so we had this berry cake from Whole Foods, and it's really good. Just melts in your mouth. It's like perfect. Tiramisu, yes. Yep. I like it. Is this supposed to be sour gummy bear, sour candy? Yes, that's my husband's favorite. Sour candy, any sort of sour stuff. It's his favorite. Love it, guys. All right, cheesecake. Yep. Thank you for sharing that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing my screen. You can keep responding. We do save these responses, and then I'll introduce Dr. Peterson. Give me 1 second. All righty. So our speaker today, Dr. Peterson, I'm sure you all know about him by now. He completed his medical training in Midwest, actually. That's where I went to med school in Chicago. He completed his fellowship in pulmonary and critical care medicine at the University of Iowa, and he remained as a faculty there for 16 years after he finished his fellowship. And then he also served as a fellowship director and a curriculum director for medical school there before we sort of brought him here to Fresno, recruited him all the way to Fresno. So he's been here since 2002, which is amazing, as the chief of medicine for here UCSF Fresno branch, which he did for 17 years. And now he's the associate dean since 2015. And he's done a great job, as you will find out today, for improving educational opportunities here in the Valley and making sure that we have this strong residency program here in the Valley, and it continues to stay this way, which we really do appreciate. His wife Barbara and him thoroughly enjoy living in California, which we're happy about, and traveling to the many great areas in the state. He did share a picture, which I will share with you guys right now. So here we go. So one of the Harleys are his, and one of them is his wife's. Is that correct, Dr. Peterson? Yes. And he said he'll let you guys figure out which one is which. So those are the two Harleys that he has. I love the puppy. I just got a puppy that looks very similar to that. So Dr. Peterson, I'm going to let you take over the stage and go ahead and we'll get started with your talk.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Suki. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to this audience. This is always one of the fun things. I always enjoy the opportunity to talk with people about our program, about becoming a physician, and about the changes that we've made in Fresno over the last 45 years that we've been here. So let me pull up my slides and we'll get started. So we're going to talk a little bit about building healthcare in the Central Valley, talk a bit about how do you build a doctor, and the future of medical education at UCSF Fresno. So all of you have had the opportunity to play the position of being a student in a medical school, as some of our outstanding faculty have had had an opportunity to lecture you. Today, we're going to spend time first with me and then with Dr. Banh to talk about, all right, what is the real process that if you're going to go through to become a physician? So let's start with a couple of questions. Some of it will frame the demography of the audience, so I get an idea about sort of what you guys are, your backgrounds are. So if you could select, what best describes you on your educational pathway, that you're high school or earlier, that you're in college, that you're in graduate school, or you're doing this because you're life learning. You're doing this for the pleasure of learning something. So we'll give people a couple of minutes or so. Great, so it looks like roughly half of you are on the cusp of deciding what you're going to do with your life. That's great to know as we frame some of the things that I'll be talking with you about. So next, what best describes why you're attending mini medical school? A would be, I think I want a career in healthcare. 2 says I, or B, I'm preparing to apply for graduate nursing, pharmacy, or medical school. And C, I'm enjoying learning for the pleasure of learning. Great, so that's very helpful. So again, about 60% of you are thinking about what you want to do with your career at this point in terms of advanced training. So now let's ask a couple of questions about what you know about medical training. So how long does it take minimally from the time that you graduate from high school to being able to get a license to practice medicine in the state of California? Okay, very good distribution there. So some of what I'll be here talking with you about, I think will educate people about the process for becoming a physician in the state of California. So when did UCSF Fresno start training doctors in the Central Valley? 1950, 1975, 1985, or the year 2000? Okay, well, great. We have some distribution. So in most of the distribution is around 1975, which in fact is the date that our program was created. And how much in the year 2020, how much of your post-high school training to become a physician can be completed in the Central Valley? So if you look at from the time that you graduate from high school to the time that you would graduate from medical school, how much of that time can be done in the Central Valley right now? Okay, well, very good. So we call this within the educational realm a teaching moment, learning opportunity. So, all right. So what I want to talk with you about tonight, and outline the talk a bit. So what is the need for the region? Why do we focus so much on medical education within the UCSF Fresno program? We're also going to go through the steps to prepare to become a practicing physician. We're going to start with pipeline programs, post-bac programs, medical school, and graduate medical education, and talk a little bit about what's required in each of those steps along the way, and when now in the state of California, you can actually qualify to have a license to practice medicine. We're then going to talk about regional opportunities for medical school, and we're going to address the question I have of what percentage of time can you do actually remaining within the Central Valley? And then we're going to talk about regional opportunities for graduate medical education and what the difference is between the undergraduate and graduate medical education. So what are the needs of the region? Why do we focus so much on the area of medical education and producing physicians and other healthcare providers? Well, the current state in the Central Valley, unfortunately, is not very good. If we look at health outcomes, there are 58 counties in the state of California, and Fresno County ranks 52 out of the 58 counties in terms of health outcomes. And our surrounding counties are similarly bunched around 52. We have a preterm birth rate that is one of the highest in the country, and it rivals third world countries. Now you say, well, how does that translate into health outcomes? Preterm birth is a predictor of health problems throughout the life of that particular individual. So it's not just the fact that you're born early, that you may need neonatal care, but you're set up for the rest of your life to have adult diseases, diabetes, hypertension, things like that, that are tied directly to the fact that you were born early. As you probably hear in the press all the time. We have a disproportionate incidence of diabetes, asthma, and obesity among the population in our region. And we have one of the highest rates of congenital syphilis in the United States. So none of those are things that we are particularly proud of and are areas that we try to focus on, and why we're spending so much time and effort, both from the UC system as well as our program, to try to produce physicians and improve healthcare. Now, there are many complex things that are behind health outcomes. But one of the things that we recognize contributes to poor health outcomes is poor access to healthcare. How easy is it for you to get seen by a physician, to get the care provided to you if you have a chronic condition, which is very common in our population? And if you look, our number of primary care physicians in the Central Valley is about 45 per 100,000 population. That compares with a statewide average of 57 per 100,000, and a recommended number in the rest of the country of 60 to 80 per 100,000. So you see that we're only at about 60% or 50 to 60% of the number of primary care physicians that we should have for our population. We also have a very poor demographic match. So we have a region of the country that has a very large Latino population, 40% of the population, but only 6% of the physicians in the state are Latino or Latinx. Now, why does that matter? Well, over the last decade to 2 decades, one of the things that we have learned is that health outcomes are much better among the patient population when there is a good match between the patient and the physician in terms of ethnic background, racial background, language issues, gender. That is very hard to put your finger on exactly why that is the case, but it is clear on multiple studies that that is the case. And so one of the things that we're in an environment that is rich with a diverse population of people to draw from to come into medicine. So it is one of the things that we want to focus on in terms of helping to diversify the physician population within the Central Valley. So now let's talk a little bit about the pathway to becoming a physician. If you think that producing a physician starts in medical school, you're 12 years too late. What we recognize is that we really need to start to work with schools and students early on. Junior high is one of the areas that we have some programs in with Junior Doctors Academy. We're going to talk a little bit about, in the next slide or so, about what we try and focus on in those early educational experiences. Within high school, we have a number of programs that are available. We have the Summer Biomedical Intern Program, where students between their junior and senior year have the opportunity to work with faculty and do research projects. And then we have the Doctors Academy right now within a number of high schools in the region. We then have the 4-year college degree. We have the Fresno State Health Careers Opportunity Program. We put on a program, which I think we just put on about a month ago, called Reaching Out to Aspiring Doctors. That is a 1-day event. Some of you may have participated in that this year, so that we help you to understand what kinds of health careers are available, what the process for applying for medical school looks like, how you make yourself competitive for those kinds of opportunities. We then have medical school, which goes on for 4 additional years. We're very happy that we now have much more ability to do the medical school education within the Central Valley. And you'll hear more about that with Dr. Banh and the San Joaquin Valley Prime program. But we now, with the San Joaquin Valley Prime program, together with UCSF, can provide 2.5 of the 4 years of training in medicine, in medical school, in Fresno and the surrounding parts of the Central Valley. Then we go on to residency training. So here is where we transition from medical school, or so-called undergraduate medical education, to graduate medical education. And that's called residency training. So this may last anywhere from 3 to 5 years, depending upon which of the specialties you're training in. For example, family and community medicine and internal medicine and pediatrics are all 3 years of training after medical school. Others are 4 years, OBGYN, emergency medicine, and psychiatry, among others. And then some are 5 years, and those tend to be the surgical specialties, general surgery and orthopedic surgery. So we have 9 residency programs with about 260 physicians in training in Fresno, utilizing the hospital's mostly community medical centers and the VA hospital, but also have some in some of the other hospitals. When you complete your residency training, you can go into practice in that specialty. One of the laws that changed this year, and reflects one of the questions that I asked you, was you now need to complete a minimum of 3 years of postgraduate or graduate medical education training before you can qualify for a medical license in the state of California. So 4 years of college, 4 years of medical school, and a minimum of 3 years of residency training. So combined, that's 11 years post high school, minimally, to qualify for a medical license in the state of California. A subset of our trainees and trainees from other places in the country will go on to do what's called subspecialty training. And those are done as fellowships, and those fellowships typically last somewhere between 1 and 3 years. And so, for example, if you want to become a cardiologist, you must complete 3 years of internal medicine training and then 3 additional years of cardiology training in order to be qualified to sit for accreditation boards for cardiology. Then you can become a practicing physician, either through this pathway directly or after the fellowship. But that doesn't end the need for education as a physician. So all of us are required to continue to do continuing medical education. That is education that we do to keep up with advances within medicine. So one of the things that I think is a lot of fun in medicine is things are always changing. Now, you need look no further than what's happening right now in our world with COVID-19. This is a disease that did not exist in the world prior to December of 2019. A disease that did not exist. And so now we are dealing with millions of people in this country who are infected, hundreds of thousands of people who are hospitalized, and 250,000 people who have died from this disease. And as practicing physicians, both at the emergency medicine level, the primary care level, the critical care, intensive care level, we're all having to learn how to treat this disease. And I think one of the interesting pieces of data about what's happened over the 9-month period of time that this disease has existed in the world, if you look at what was happening in the state of New York during the first surge in April, very good hospitals with excellent training programs and excellent physicians were experiencing mortality rates for patients being admitted to the hospital at around 6 to 7%. And if you were admitted to the ICU, you had more than a 50-50 chance that you were going to die in the hospital. If you now fast forward a mere 5 months to 6 months later, when the surge happens within Fresno in July and August, our mortality rate within community medical centers was a couple of percent, and our mortality rate in the ICU was about 10%. So over that period, and that's not because we're better doctors than those doctors in New York, it's because we learned with them what worked and what didn't work in the care of patients with COVID-19. So that's a real example of why continuing medical education is so incredibly important. One other interesting fact is that when you look at a typical physician who may practice for 35 or 40 years, what they learned in medical school that were facts, half of those facts are no longer true at the time that they retire. So you are constantly learning, you are constantly being exposed to new biomedical information. And as I said, it's one of the things that really makes it interesting and fun to be a physician. Both you get to build relationships with your patients, but you also have the opportunity to continue to grow and learn. So let's go back to some of those pathway steps along the way, and what kinds of things that we found working with educators and working with pathway programs that are really important. So at the junior high level, that's the Junior Doctors Academy. That's one of the areas where we help the students, or the Junior Doctors Academy does with coaches and mentors, to establish study habits, to develop time management skills, the ability to get your work done in a timely fashion, and really an introduction to STEM kinds of experiences and healthcare experiences, to try to get some idea about what it means to be a physician, a pharmacist, a nurse practitioner. In high school, we then have the Doctors Academy, again, that work to enhance the study habits and time management that began in junior high, to expand the exposure to healthcare and research. So during the summer, those students within there are have the opportunity to work with physicians. This year, not so much because of COVID-19, but to really get an idea about what it looks like and feels like to work in a hospital environment, to work in an ambulatory care environment, and then to really help prepare students to matriculate to college. So the Doctors Academy has had an excellent record in terms of going into high schools where they had a relatively low rate of students going on to four-year schools and enhancing that significantly. We also, as I said, want to try and increase exposure to healthcare. So this is a project that Dr. Banh started several years ago called Mobile Heal. And I know he's going to talk to you a little bit about it because it's a backbone for our project with COVID this year. But it's an opportunity to go out into the community and to work with faculty, physicians, residents, fellows, medical students to provide care for vulnerable populations that don't really have good access to healthcare. We then go on to the college or university. That's minimum of 4 years for the students to get through that. As I said earlier, we work with Fresno State on the Health Careers Opportunity Program. And so that's coaching and mentoring, and again, helping with study habits and those kinds of things so that they can come out of a 4-year university with the background to be able to succeed in medical school. We work with UC Merced on pre-med advising. And one of the things that we're really excited about that Dr. Banh is working on with me and with other faculty here with UCSF and with UC Merced is to develop an 8-year program with UC Merced where students could start at UC Merced, and if they would hit all the metrics that they need to, they would be able to seamlessly go into an MD program with UCSF. I said we host the Reaching Out to Aspiring Doctors Conference to help provide background to people and advice about the application process and succeeding in healthcare. And then we assist in developing post-bac programs to strengthen applications. So students that get through 4 years of university and graduate but may not have the most competitive application to get into medical school, these are programs for them to build their experience and strengthen their application into medical school. And then, as I said, medical school is 4 years. So starting with the class of 2023, that's the graduating class of 2023, started in July 2019, is the UCSF San Joaquin program in medical education. This is not new to us, a prime program. That's a program in medical education. You will hear from some of the students that have been in that program or are currently in that program in a partnership that we've had for, I believe, 7 years with UC Davis. And that program is transitioning to UCSF with the class that came in 2019. So we matriculated 6 students in 2019 and 12 students in 2020. And we will continue at 12 students until we have sufficient funding to be able to expand beyond those 12 students. Now, what does a prime program mean? So each of the medical schools in the UC system have a prime program. And that prime program is targeted to recruit students from historically underrepresented minorities in medicine. So I talked a little bit about, we have a huge Latinx population in the state of California and an embarrassingly small population of Latinx physicians. So that's one area of underrepresented minorities. There's a similar shortage of African-American physicians and other underrepresented minorities. And then for our program, we're specifically targeting recruiting students from the Central Valley and who express an interest in practicing in the Central Valley. And as I said, we have a plan laid out that if and when we identify additional funding to help expand the medical education program at the medical school level to expand to 50 students per year. For the students that are entering into the UCSF San Joaquin Valley Prime, they will be trained using the UCSF Bridges curriculum. This is a curriculum which I believe now is 5 years old. That was a revision of the curriculum that UCSF had been teaching for about 20 years. In addition, we have the opportunity to put in a number of topics which are specific to the Central Valley. So again, students will be exposed to some of the unique challenges that we have in the Central Valley, issues around drug abuse, human trafficking, some of the infectious diseases that we have, such as valley fever, the issue that I talked about with congenital syphilis and other sexually transmitted diseases. So they will get added experience within those things to help to prepare them to provide healthcare within the Central Valley. Now, initially, the first 18 months will be in San Francisco, but the last 2.5 years are in the Central Valley. So the answer to the question that I asked is, right now with the UCSF San Joaquin Valley Prime program, a student coming out of high school could spend 85% of their time being trained in medicine in the Central Valley. So the only time that right now that they have to leave the Central Valley to do that is the first 18 months in San Francisco. And in addition to working on developing a combination baccalaureate MD program with UC Merced, we are also working with them to be able to deliver those 18 months in the Central Valley. So I would hope that the answer to that question within 4 to 5 years is that 100% of your training can take place in the Central Valley. So these are the 2 classes that matriculated. The one on the left is the class of 2019 incoming class, and the one on the right is the new 2020 incoming class. And all of these students are from the Valley. So we're very proud of them. UCSF is very proud of them. Now that they've had almost a year and a half of experience with them, they cannot differentiate these students from all the students that are admitted into UCSF. Something that we anticipated, but they didn't necessarily anticipate it. But these students are doing an unbelievably great job. So then I want to focus a little bit on specialty and subspecialty training. So as I said, physicians now cannot practice in California until they have completed at least 3 years of residency training. And residency is the first phase of graduate medical education, as I pointed out. And I said that we have 7 residencies with up to 280 residents. All of them spend the majority of their time in the Valley learning to provide healthcare under the oversight of faculty in Fresno. So Dr. Dillon and Dr. Banh are both products of the residency program here, who have then stayed on to contribute to the faculty that are here too. About 50% of our graduates will remain within the Central Valley. We expect and anticipate with the development of the UCSF San Joaquin Valley Prime program that we should be able to hit potentially 70% remaining within the Central Valley. And then, as I pointed out, specialty and subspecialty training is an additional 3 to 7 years, depending upon how crazy you are a little bit. But after the residencies, these are people that opt to do subspecialty training. So cardiology is one of those areas that I have to tell you that you can become a cardiologist. If you want to become an electrophysiologist, you do 2 more years of training. If you want to become a heart failure cardiologist, you do another year of training. So it can, if you're a GI physician, you do 3 years of training. If you want advanced endoscopy, you'll do another year of training. So, and we have most of those opportunities here for people to be able to train, or people that have trained here in the basic fellowships have ended up being very competitive for those training opportunities in the rest of the country. We have 17 fellowships with 42 trainees at this time across a number of different disciplines. So why are we focusing so much on trying to recruit students from the region into our medical education programs? Well, some of it is selfish. We understand that part of the reason that we were put into the Central Valley is to recruit physicians and increase access to care in the Central Valley. And we know now from many years of research that 2 things will predict where a physician will end up practicing. One is where the physician grew up. So that's the focus, to try to bring students into the San Joaquin Valley Prime program that grew up in the Valley. The second is, where did the physician finish their training? In other words, where they finished their residency and fellowship. So we have a fairly solid background in that, having done graduate medical education training now for 45 years, going on 46. And so with these 2 things, that's why I said we feel that we can increase our ability to attract people to practice within the Central Valley. And this is always an impressive picture. I have this hanging up. It's the first thing I see when I walk into the dean's office every morning. Is these are the number of house staff that we have training right now in Fresno to become physicians within the Central Valley. So every day I come in, I'm proud to be part of the program that's helping these people become outstanding physicians for the region. So a bit in summary, UCSF Fresno is really committed to preparing physicians to practice in the San Joaquin Valley. It is one of our primary missions. As I said, about 50% of our resident and fellow trainees remain in the Valley to provide care. We are also committed to developing a diverse workforce that looks like our patients and understands their language and culture. And the reason for that is, as I stated earlier, that we know that health outcomes improve when we do a match like that. UCSF Fresno is committed to working with our community partners to improve health outcomes in the Valley. And so I expect that Dr. Banh will talk to you a little bit about the COVID project that he has been heading up to do that. We all recognize in medicine that we have made great strides managing chronic diseases. People don't die from the chronic diseases they used to die from. They'll live 10, 15, 20 years now with those chronic diseases. The problem is we really want to be preventing those chronic diseases. Yes, my faculty in endocrinology and primary care can take care of a patient with diabetes quite well. The problem is we really don't want to have that patient with diabetes. We want to be able to prevent the diabetes. We want to be able to prevent the hypertension. And the only way that you're going to do that is that you get out into the community, you work with partners in the community to understand the lifestyle changes, the nutritional aspects, all of those things that we need to do to prevent these diseases. So we can't do this seeing a patient one at a time in a clinic. We do this because we want to get out into the community and work with our community partners. So as we look at the San Joaquin Valley Prime program, that is one of the areas that we're going to focus on with the students, is getting them out into the community, getting comfortable working with community partners to understand how in their future careers they help to influence the incidence of health problems within their community. And we really hope that among the people that are listening in to us today, that some of you will become part of our training program in the future, and maybe even follow the pathways of Dr. Dillon and Dr. Banh and become teaching faculty for the program. So with that, I will hopefully stop sharing. There we go. And happy at this point to answer any questions that people have.
If anybody wants to ask a question verbally for Dr. Peterson, just raise your hand, please, and I'll unmute you. That way you can ask your question out loud instead of typing it in the Q&A. I know we've been asked Dr. Banh and Anuvir, who's one of the Prime students, and then myself have been answering questions in the Q&A already. There's a question, Dr. Peterson, in the Q&A that says, what are the least specialties that we see in the Central Valley? Is it neuro, cardio, rheumatology? What have you seen?
Yeah, so the harder question to answer, well, the simpler question to answer is, what specialties do we have in the Valley that we have sufficient numbers? And that answer is none. But we clearly do have areas of really critical need. I think neurology services that you mentioned clearly is one of those things that we have a great need for. Some of the subspecialties in medicine where you'd think, gosh, we've got this big diabetes problem, we should have lots of endocrinologists. We don't have very many endocrinologists in the Valley. So it's really across the board that we have shortages. The beauty when, in my prior role in the chief of medicine and was recruiting faculty to come, was to be able to explain to them that unlike many places that they'd go to where it'll take you a couple of years to build your practice, we'll have a full practice for you from the day that you arrive, because the need is so great. So
that is true. We actually had rheumatology one of the rheumatologists come talk to us, and I think that really gave people an idea of how much we're lacking in having specialists in the Valley, and not just specialists, even primary care physicians, right? We have so much need here in the Valley, and that was one of the biggest reasons, like you mentioned, to start this program here in Fresno. There's another question that says, have you admitted students to SGV Prime who are not originally from San Joaquin Valley?
Kenny can probably answer that question better than I, but the answer I suspect is yes. So part of it is where you grew up, but part of the process also is to identify people coming from those underrepresented minorities who have spent time in the Central Valley and have an interest in providing care within the Central Valley. And I don't know, Kenny, did you want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, that is well said. We have admitted students that are not born and raised in the Valley, but they all spent significant time in the Valley, usually going to college, doing post-bacs, doing outreach, doing AmeriCorps. I mean, the list goes on and on. There's, it's about commitment to the underserved and commitment to our patient population that we're looking for. Being from here, of course, is a great determiner of that, but it's not the only one.
Thank you, Dr. Banh and Dr. Peterson. There are a couple more questions. Dr. Peterson, there's a question about demographic data that you had mentioned about 6% Latino physicians versus 40% total Latino population here in the Valley. Jeanette just wanted to know, because she wanted to read up more on it. She was wondering where you got that data from so she could potentially read up on that.
Yeah, there was a study that came out of UCSF in, I believe, 2016, called the Health Workforce Study, and it's available publicly on. You can go into Google and type it in, and that was a study that was eventually the University of California wants to do a study looking at all of these kinds of issues around demographics and healthcare needs and things within the state. And the prior president of the university said that she wanted to focus on the Central Valley first because it was the area that was clearly of greatest need. And so that that document contains much of the data around which we built the program.
I think there's a question about to be a physician anesthesiologist, can we attend UCSF Fresno after attending 2 years at CCC? I wonder if they're talking about Clovis Community College. I could start, or Dr. Peterson, you could respond to that.
Yeah, well, so we think that the community college are a rich source of students to come into medicine, given the demographics of the students within community colleges. And so we are working with UC Merced, and I know UC Merced is also very interested in facilitating that, as is UCSF, as is Fresno State, to be able to have those students be able to matriculate into those four-year universities before they go on to medical school.
Yeah, so I think being local here, it helps to take some of those undergrad requirement classes that you don't need to take for medical school if they're not offered at Clovis Community. You can do the first 2 years potentially at community college, and then do prerequisites at state if indicated, versus going to programs that sort of combine the undergraduate requirement with medical school, which would be great. And then you will have to go on to medical school after that, and then you could come to UCSF Fresno to do your potentially a transitional year here, or come work with us. We do not have anesthesiology residency here in Fresno. However, I believe the UCSF main campus does have residency in that.
In fact, many of our anesthesiologists here trained at UCSF, and anesthesia is one of the core clerkship requirements with UCSF. So we've been able to tap into them as potential faculty for us for the students next year.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun on my anesthesia rotation. That was actually one of my first few rotations as an intern, and I learned a lot. My first intubation was as a resident, and I've come far along since then. Yes. question about not from Central Valley, but from Southern California, San Gabriel Valley. I would love to serve there. Would I be able to apply?
Yes, we're happy to have anybody interested in practicing in the Valley, caring for our patient population. As Dr. Banh said, we're more than happy to have them apply to our program.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Peterson. Those are the questions that I have. Guys, if you have any more questions, please raise your hands or please type it in the Q&A. This has been really informational, even for myself, getting to know the history about this program more and more every single time I hear your talk. So I really appreciate that.
Thanks, I enjoyed it.
We'll give them a couple of minutes and see if they have any more questions for you. And then maybe we'll go on a break if they are done with their questions for now.
Dr. Peterson, did you want to talk about your transition to the Central Valley and how you found that?
So I'd spent all my life prior to coming to Fresno in the Midwest. And when I was approached about was I interested in the position out here, I had to look up in the map for where Fresno was. My wife thought, well, are you saying Frisco? I said, no, Fresno. And then I came out and really fell in love with the place. As I tell people, it's the best Midwestern town in the country. Very Midwestern feel to it, but a lot of advantages over Midwestern communities, not the least of which is it doesn't snow here. So I went to medical school in Minneapolis, and my brother is still there as a practicing attorney, and he sent me pictures today of their 6 inches of snow they had today. And I told him how it's breaking my heart not to be back there. After we'd been here for a couple of years, my wife asked me one day, she said, now, you're not thinking of leaving or looking at other jobs or anything, are you? And I said, no, why would I do that? And she said, well, I just wanted to make sure you weren't because I'm not going with you. So, you know, the whole family has gotten, fallen in love with the region and the state.
That's awesome. Yes, my husband is actually from Michigan. And my in-laws really want us to move out there, and living in Chicago for 4 years, even though I love the cold, it's been perfect. My husband, who's from Canada and then Michigan, does not want to move back to Midwest anymore. He's like, yeah. I am happy here. I think this is good.
Yeah.
Yes. There's one more question that came up. They said, does it look bad on medical school applications if you take longer than 4 years, say 5 to 6 years to finish your undergraduate degree?
No, I think that, you know, one of the things that that we look for in a more holistic application process to medical school is people's life experiences. And whereas, you know, in the past, it may have been looked on unfavorably. Now, actually, if you're doing that either because, well, you have to work, you have to help to support a family, you wanted to explore some things before you settled into that you wanted to be in medicine. All of those are actually viewed very positively now as we look at, you know, we really want to bring well-rounded people into medicine. And one of the things I think that we all see, you know, broadly is people that have spent all of their life being in school, performing well in school, that there's a certain maturity that needs to happen at some point about really experiencing life so that you have some way to connect with your patients. And I think the more life experiences that people have, the more positive that is. So no, none of that is going to hold you back.
Thank you, Dr. Peterson. I think that sort of goes with the next question that came up as well, is about non-traditional students who've been out of college for quite some time before they apply to medical schools.
Yeah, I think that, you know, as I said, life experiences are important. I have personally trained with and trained people that, were out doing another career before they came back to medicine. And in some ways, they're more committed because they really did it with their eyes wide open. They'd already seen life on the other side and decided, no, this is what I want to do with my life. So I think, none of those things exclude you from an application process to medical school.
There's a question about, is there any loan forgiveness programs for residents at UCSF SGB Prime? How do they work?
Yeah, so Kenny, again, will be really well positioned to talk about this. But one of the things that when we developed the San Joaquin Valley Prime program that we committed to was, because we were trying to recruit a certain demographic of students in that are not necessarily going to be coming from families with financial privilege, where they have a lot of money to help to support a student, that we recognized that we really had to commit a lot of time and effort to fundraising for scholarships, so that ultimately what we'd like to be able to do is to give students that get accepted into the program a full ride scholarship for the 4 years. It will take us a while to raise the money to be able to do that, but that's our goal. And Kenny and others have been very successful raising money in the first couple of years of the UCSF San Joaquin Valley Prime program. One of the things that we took advantage of this year was a matching program that UCSF put in place. So for every dollar we raise for scholarships, they match it with $1. And that's been a very effective way for us to encourage foundations and individuals to make contributions into scholarship, because they'll double the amount of money that they're putting in. So Kenny, I don't know if you wanted to say anything additionally about that.
Yeah, I would just say, UCSF is a top 5 national medical school. It's the only public institution that ranks in the top 10 in both primary care as well as research institutions. I'll say we have lost students, and the number one reason that a student gets accepted to UCSF and from the Valley and turns down SJV Prime is actually funding. So I'm very well aware of that, because that same student might get a full ride to go to another school like Harvard or UCLA that might have a larger endowment. As a state institution, we don't have the same access to endowments that some of the private institutions do, but I work very hard on trying to raise funds so we can provide financial aid as well as scholarships for the students. Part of the discussion of, if you guys may or may not be aware of, is with the $15 million coming in the state, that we do have some of that funneling into financial aid for students to make sure that we can help better meet the needs of our UCSF students and SJV Prime, and knowing that they will come from on average lower socioeconomic income, and we want to definitely not make finances the barrier. Something I work very hard on, and not always successful, but it's a big part of, I feel like, my job is trying to raise funds for students.
And we appreciate that, Dr. Banh. One of the attendees has their hands up, so I'm going to allow them to talk and ask their question real quick.
Okay.
Go ahead, Elizabeth. You'll have to unmute yourself.
I noticed, I realized that. Sorry. Hi, guys. My name is Elizabeth. I have a question. I am applying to med school. The only thing my concern is, I have an awesome science GPA. However, my cumulative GPA, it's pretty on the low end. I think it's right now maybe a 3.0 or a little bit less. And it was due to domestic violence that I experienced in Fresno, actually. So I had to leave Fresno and come out to the Bay Area because of my background, because of safety reasons. So how would that look on the admission committee? And if you recommend me doing a post-PAC program to be able to compensate for that?
Kenny, you want to answer that since you've been on the admissions process?
Sure. Well, I'll speak. First off, I'm sorry about your experience, and nobody should be a victim of domestic violence. So I apologize for that. And I'm glad that you've gotten the help that you needed. So that's the most important thing, is that you get the help you need so you can get on the track for getting back on your feet. Secondly, we look at significant events very carefully. It's part of the holistic applications. The old system used to very much be like, look at your GPA, calculate your science GPA, calculate your MCAT percentile, and that was like a half a year application right there, basically. It's no longer like that. We do look at if there's hiccups, as you mentioned, in the academic track. there's a couple things we look at. One thing has to do with, is there an event? For instance, as you mentioned, is that a decent event? What happened with it? What does that mean? Is it on the student or was it extenuating circumstances? This happens a lot with medical events, actually. If someone had, heaven forbid, someone has cancer and had to like take a leave of absence or work another job or take care of family. So that happens quite a lot, actually. The other thing to look at is the trend of grades. Is after that period was over and they've recovered, is the grade trend going in an upward direction, or is it still struggling throughout? So I can't answer that question for you globally because it really is, as I know the word is batted around a lot about holistic applications, but it really is. It's looked at from an individual standpoint of what that means to that person. There's no black and white, just like there's no black and white MCAT or GPA to get in, like there sort of used to be in pre-holistic applications.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you for your answer. Greatly appreciate your time.
Thank you, Dr. Banh. I know there's more questions coming in, but what we'll do is let's take like 3-minute break so we can get on with Dr. Bahn's talk. And then we'll have a good chunk of time to ask all the questions, and we'll go over the other questions that have come up if that's okay with everybody. And then we'll go from there.
Sounds great. Thanks, Dr. Dillon. So I'm going to post the raffle link one last time. If anybody wants to go ahead and submit for that, you have to do it by 6:30 because I need a chance to compile everything while the Q&A is happening. So go ahead and take care of that. I will go ahead and put up the header slides for just a moment in case you have any questions about anything, but we will come back and we'll do a very in-depth Q&A and also have a discussion with Dr. Banh. So we will see you, let's say 5 after? 6,
Yep.
5? Perfect. All right. Thanks, everyone. See you back in a minute.
And thank you, Dr. Peterson, for your time and for your great talk. We really do appreciate it. Yes. All right. I apologize for the background noises. It is food time for the new puppy in the house, so there might be lots of noise in the background. But I'm going to introduce Dr. Banh. I've been very fortunate to train with basically under him for the last 4 years, so it's been an amazing time. So Dr. Banh actually earned his medical degree at Drexel University College of Medicine, and then completed his residency at UCSF Fresno in emergency medicine, and then decided to stay on, which is amazing. He's earned many academic awards, including UCSF Academic Senate Distinction in Teaching. He has done many, many presentations on emergency medicine at various different conferences and talks nationally. He is currently an assistant dean of undergraduate medical education, and that's how he's involved with the PRIME program and getting funding for the medical students here. And he's also is an associate professor of clinical emergency medicine, and that's how I got to work with him. He's also the director of Mobile Health and Learning and COVID-19 Equity Project, which I'm sure you all have heard of here and on the news. He is on the AMC's Group on Regional Medical Campuses Committee, focusing on regional medical school campus development. So that's something he's been working really hard on. His personal interest that I got off the website says that he enjoys basketball, ballroom dancing, and martial arts. I also know that he loves spending time with his kids and their friends. So he loves, what are those games, Dr. Banh, that we go and we do the, what are they called?
Laser tag, no surrender.
Oh, yeah, laser tags. He loves.
I'm a killer laser tag player.
Yeah. He's a killer laser tag player. He's also a really good teacher. It's always fun to work with him because he makes teaching a lot of fun. And I hope one day I can do that, but I'm nowhere close to that. But Dr. Banh, take over the stage. It's all yours.
Oh, thank you, Suki. It's great, by the way, to see Suki and all my medical students. I love seeing everyone on the panel. In our pandemic world, it's hard to get to see everyone. So I just like the whole personal end of it, seeing all these people, all my students and former students. It's awesome. It's great to answer all those questions about applications and admissions. I'm going to take a little bit of a detour and talk about my story and kind of tie it back into sort of a career, why I do the things I do. So just kind of bear with, I hope it'll make sense in about 5-10 minutes, but it'll seem tangential at first. So my story starts on a boat. My parents are rocking on a boat adrift at sea. They're clutching my 2 brothers. They're both infants, 1 and 3 months old. They've fled from Vietnam, 1975, end of the Vietnam War. America's just pulled out. Everyone's rushing to the boats and just trying to get out of the country. My dad had fought in the war for the South Vietnamese side as a helicopter pilot. He was shot, survived. a lot of people died. A lot of people didn't make it. People fell into the sea and the ocean. People went into the boats, and some people got captured back by the communists. Some people starved to death. A lot of like people were just trying to survive at that point, and a lot of people didn't. I mean, I didn't even tell the story till like 10 years ago, but my oldest sister is one of those. She never made it out of the country and died as a baby. And, you know, talk about health disparities and other things. And, you know, I wasn't born yet. My story comes a little later. My brothers are, you know, just infants, and we get into refugee camp and get sponsored in rural Pennsylvania. And that's where I come in. I was born in a refugee camp. And I know that story's like, you know, maybe resonates with some other people. Grew up mostly in a trailer park, truthfully, slept on the floor. We had a little 2-bedroom house, and I slept on the floor with my parents and my, you know, we were the first ones to have a house. So despite having this little, like, basically a shack, you're like the rich ones because you're the first ones here. So all the families, all your cousins and aunts and uncles, when they come over, they all come to you. So basically in our little 2-bedroom house, we had 15 people living in it. You know, a bunch of people sleeping in the basement, or people sleeping outside, just intense. It's just, you know, it's funny. We finally, you know, we were in the city in this rural Pennsylvania area. My parents saved up all this money because my brother was approaching high school to move into the burbs, into like a good public school district. And then we moved out when I was 10 years old. And I remember, because I was wishing for it for years and years. I remember I got my birthday, Christmas, and everything wish when I was 10 years old, because I moved out and I got a bed, and I'd never slept in a bed before because I'd always slept on the floor my entire life, you know, next to my parents. Well, actually, I did have a bed. Sometimes I'd sneak in and kick my dad out of the bed and my mom's bed or something like that. But, you know, in general, I just slept on a mat all my life. So I was like crying for days. I remember it very clearly that I finally had a bed to sleep in. You know, it's little things like that that keep you kind of grounded, think about what's important in life. People always say I'm kind of happy. And I'm like, well, you think about the big picture of things. It's like, it doesn't matter. I'm not sleeping on a mat. It doesn't matter what I eat. It doesn't matter. I'm not, you know, the things, when you look at what perspective, it's what matters in life. You know, I say we grew up really abjectly poor, but it's honestly, I think I had a great childhood. I'd say we would sit around. My parents both, you know, had to work at the factory. They had escaped, you know, my dad was in the war. He was shot, as I mentioned, and no one had education. They both worked at the plant. And we would, you know, afternoons were spent with the family, just sort of like trying to get jobs together. My mom would bring home these things, these hair clips, but in pieces, and bring home these crates of them by the thousand. And we just pour them on the floor, and we'd sit around after dinner and just sit on the floor with hot glue guns and staplers. And we'd make little hair clips that you'd sell at like Banh in the mall when malls were open and sold those things, you know? And I remember I'm 8 years old, just sitting there working glue guns and making little hair clips. And my new age parenting background, now that I'm all educated, would be like, wow, this was like quality arts and craft time that we're like, you know, now I understand that it's really just child labor I was doing, you know, just working piecemeal, trying to, you know, but it paid for, you know, dinner or whatever to keep the family afloat. But, you know, so that was my like childhood memories, but it was like, but there was a lot of love and there's a lot of food. They had to fight for it. So it was like, you know, it wasn't a household that was, you know, I wasn't abused. I didn't have drugs in my family. Those are things that I had a supportive family that was very emotionally supportive, if not financially supportive. So people are always like, you know, you're smart, you can do it. I was like, you know, just keep going to school so you don't have to work like they did their whole life. So I'm doing well in high school. I was kind of lucky. Everyone's always just said, hey, you're really smart. You've tested very well. Just go do this, go do that. I'm like, okay, I've just kind of went along with it. I didn't really have study skills. I didn't have role models. I had no one who went to college before me, nobody who's navigated any of these things. And I remember things that I just major mistakes in my life. I'll tell you one of them. I was, you know, applying to college, and I put on my application, I put these things where you put your parents' income, your parents' education, highest level. And I put that my parents both went to some college because I was just so ashamed that they were, like, my dad didn't even graduate high school, and just the war was happening, and I had no education, my family. I was just so like ashamed of it that I lied on my college applications, because I was like trying to tell them like, oh my gosh, I can't like go to this, like apply to these Ivy League schools with like coming from my background, which is so ridiculous if I think about it now, about like how that would have helped me on my admissions if I would have just told the truth. but I had no college advising that would like say you should, really tell your story instead of trying to basically spend my whole life covering it up, like trying to make like a fit in, not being the poor kid, not being the immigrant, not being the kids who, parents don't speak English or worked at the factory. So I got into University of Pennsylvania. That's in Philadelphia. It's where a certain president of the United States went. I actually went to school at the same time that Don Jr. was there, for better or for worse. We didn't really hang out. We weren't in the same social circles. It's interesting because it really, when I went to college, it was a huge change all of a sudden, because now I saw this like massive shift between, I never knew, all these people were like my housemates, my people in my dorms were like, oh, I went to Vassar, and like I went to this prep school, and I went to this and transferred. I'm like, I had no idea what they're talking about. Like I went to the rural public school system. There was nothing else as an option. I never had done any of this stuff. They're talking about things that are basically foreign languages to me. And I was interested in medicine, but then, and the people and the students are great, but like most of them were like, they're spending their summers working for their uncle, the electrophysiologist in the lab, or going skiing in the Swiss Alps, and asking me if I want to come along. And I'm like, I spent my summers, I went back to the plant. I didn't have rent to pay. I worked as an RA, which is a resident advisor for those who know, so I lived at the dorms for free to get my housing and food paid for. And then in the summers, I went back and worked at the factory my mom worked at, Kellogg's. It's a cereal plant. You may have heard of it. I'm really good at making raisin bread. I know all about vitamin fortification, and I have a nutrition degree, but I learned so much just working at the cereal plant for years with my parents, And it's funny because you're applying to medical school, and then you're like, well, did you do this? Have you done a research project? And what doctors have you worked, and what volunteerism? And I'm like, I didn't understand, because I'm like, I can't stay in college. I can't stay enrolled if I'm not working. So I couldn't be doing the opportunities, even though school at Penn had so many of these opportunities, I couldn't even partake in them because of my background. So it's interesting how it's like I had such like kind of poor advising and lack of like sort of opportunities, but opportunities I couldn't take care of, that I sort of like vowed that I'm going to spend my life like opening educational opportunities for those that are like me, first generation people from disadvantaged backgrounds, so that people like me, not just like me, but people from those sort of hardships can have that opportunity. I tell that story not to like make anyone feel sorry for me. I actually find it's a story of strength now. It's a story that I spent my first 20 some of my years like basically hiding, and I figured that no, this is me. And now I say, because honestly, when I tell it to people in these backgrounds, usually a lot of people in the audience can relate to it, have similar backgrounds, similar stories, similar obstacles. That I find that more people from these areas have much more similar to me than those my friends that were at Penn at college. So fast forward, I applied to medical school despite not having any research background, despite not spending all those summers working at the factory. I still applied, and I had to take a year off to do that stuff after I graduated college, so I could live at home and do some stuff. So it did probably delay me a year, but then I apply and get into medical school. I meet my future wife, who's still my wife, fortunately, so it works out, for 20 some years. She in medical school. She's a pediatrician in the area, and she's from California, Los Angeles, SoCal area. And so, but I go to medical school and I'm like, gosh, I really want to do underserved medicine. It sounds so cheesy, but I tell everyone, like, basically, I do exactly the thing that I wrote on my med school application 22 years ago. It's just like, I think we do a terrible job in medical school. We do a wonderful job of getting these wonderful students that are so eager and have done such wonderful work before they get into med school. And us as an institution, not necessarily UCSF, but medical school and residency spends the next 8 to 12 years just crushing their spirit and breaking them until they're like, oh my God, I just want to get a job, and I just want to like not graduate with $300,000 of debt, and I just don't want to work 80 hours anymore. And I get it, there's a lot of stress, but I feel like my whole thing is trying to keep that same applicant alive, the same person that applied to medical school, the same thing that was true, because I feel I'm still that same person 20 some years later. And those who know me probably know that I'm pretty much a child, I very much am. I haven't really changed. I've gotten older, but not emotionally, for better, for worse. So I was looking for residency programs, and I come look at California. My wife's from California, but I was really looking for programs that had an underserved hospital. I needed a safety net hospital. I'm an emergency medicine doctor. I wanted to work at a level 1 training program. I wanted a county population, and I wanted somewhere that had specifically a migrant population, because that's what I relate to, as well as hopefully medical school programs. Because really, when I went to med school, I realized I just love teaching, and I just love creating those opportunities for others. That's really a vicarious joy of mine that I still have to this day. And I know Suki's seen it. Like, the only thing I like better than putting in a central line is walking someone through their first one, because the joy off their face is greater than the joy I could have doing it myself. So that's like that thing I just love. And I still love it to this very day. Just seeing their eyes light up, doing whatever it is that makes them happy and getting them to that point. So my wife was from SoCal, but I was looking at programs, and really Fresno was like, it was it. It fit everything. I wasn't from the Valley, but I'm like, wow, I'm from a rural background. It's close to the city, but it's a city, but yet not a big city at the same time. I can buy a house. We can have a practice together. I can go and keep saving the world, as my wife says, trying to do all those things. And I can live in a place that the cost of living isn't so high, so I can do that, not worry about trying to pay the rent and do all these other things. I have 3 young boys, are all school age. My wife, as I say, we're 2 physician families, so we are, she owns her own practice as well. So we are super uber busy, but I wouldn't have it any other way. And I tell people, and I can talk all about admissions. I know all these people want to ask those things from the questions from before, and we'll get to it, but I'll just have to say that my story is that is why I'm here and practicing. And I hope that tells you that you can make mistakes along the way. I didn't have a 4.0 average. I didn't have a perfect MCAT. Someone saw something in me, and I'm very careful on admissions about looking at everyone's applications that same way. And my one take home on that, and with admissions, is that I always, you talk to your admissions counselor and they talk about having a well-rounded application. I tell you, I want to hear the spike. I want to see, what is it about you? When I see an admissions application, I want to see, can I picture what you're going to be in 10 years from now? And a lot of people check the box. They get their research, they get their volunteer, they do their community service, they get their GPA, they took their MCAT, their postbac, whatever it is. But really the ones that move me are people, when I hear that application, that it's really telling that if you're a researcher, be a researcher. Go all in. Show me that you love what you do. Go crazy over protein synthesis. Just make it and I love it. Just geek out on me completely. I love that. Someone who loves community service and wants to do community health, show that you've been doing that, work in that, do leadership, whatever you do, ring true. I'll tell you, every single one of these students that are on the panel right here, I interviewed them and I saw that in them. So when you guys apply, I want to see it in you, and I'll stop there.
Dr. Banh, that was great. Thank you for sharing your very personal story. We really do appreciate it. I didn't even know most of that story, and I worked with you for 4 years. I've seen the fun and happy side of you, and I've seen how dedicated you are to the medical students and to the community here. And it's nice to hear the background story to it, for sure. Thank you for sharing that. What we're going to do now is, if that's okay with all the panelists, to introduce yourself. Just tell us a little bit about who you are. Dr. Banh has sort of already introduced you a little bit, but who you are, where you're from, and which program are you part of right now?
Do you want to call them out so they know?
Yes, let's go ahead and start with Pong Zhang.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Pong Zhang. I'm from Merced, California, born and raised there. And then I go to UC Davis Medical School, and I'm a 4th year. And I'm also part of the San Joaquin Valley Prime program.
Awesome. Welcome, Pong. And then I'm going to go ahead and call Crystal Suarez.
Hi, my name is Crystal. I'm from Visalia, California, and also a 4th year at UC Davis in their San Joaquin Valley Prime program.
Welcome, Crystal. Next, I have Brandon Croft.
Hey, everybody. My name is Brandon Croft. I'm a 1st year resident in internal medicine at UCSF Fresno. I graduated from the SJV Prime program at UC Davis School of Medicine.
Awesome. Hey, Brandon. Brandon and I work together, so that's how I know him. And then next up is Anuvir Singh.
Hi, everyone. I go by Anu, like a new person. I was born and raised in India, moved to Crothers, went to Crothers High School, part of Doctors Academy program, if any of you guys are familiar with that. I'm currently living in Fresno, and I am a medical student at UCSF, but currently taking a gap year. So I'm doing a master's in public health at Berkeley. I finished my third year of med school last year, so I'll be graduating 2022.
That's awesome. Welcome, everybody. That's so great. Thank you for joining us, taking time out of your busy schedules. I know you're all very, very busy, including Dr. Banh, for coming in and talking to our participants here and answering their questions, because they have some really good questions and lots of them. So we could, like I said, to all the attendees, please raise your hand if you would like to ask a question, and I will unclick you so you can actually ask your question verbally. My dog wants to ask a question, it seems like. But otherwise, I will also read the questions out of the Q&A. So whatever works best for you guys. So we can start with something that we've already sort of touched upon. For prospective applicants, would it be possible to have advising mentoring on an application or transcripts review for non-traditional students? Dr. Banh, I can sort of answer it.
Yeah, I didn't know. I want to make sure the students have a chance to answer those things. I will say that from an admissions side, I cannot look at admissions individual applications. Sitting on admissions committee, I cannot review individual apps because I will see you on the other side. So I actually have to limit how much I interface with people who are not for potential applicants.
Any of you had any mentors in the community that looked at your application that potentially these students can reach out to? Anybody at your school? Who did you reach out to when you were applying?
I could answer something. So during my time in medical school, myself and some of my classmates actually were working with Mi Mentor, which is a program for college students and pre-med students in general. And what we would do is pair a medical student or a physician in the community with one of these students who is looking to apply to medical school. And so I think it's a great resource for pre-medical students who are looking to have maybe some further guidance on what exactly, what step in the process that they're in. So I would definitely reach out to them. If you do know a medical student, or if you do know a resident or an attending that's willing to do it, that's definitely great. But I do highly recommend working with a program like Mi Mentor, which has done wonders for students who either don't have exposure to those attending physicians or residents or medical students.
And to add to that, I have actually worked with a lot of college students and high school students as well this year and last year. So if anyone has specific questions and if they need just advice on, I am pretty free this year. I'm on my gap year, so I do have some free time. I'm happy to look over a personal statement and give you my 2 cents.
I'm also happy to look at anybody's application. I think no matter how busy I am, I always want to help you guys. I want you guys to succeed just the way people have helped me too. One thing that I did when I was in college, I honestly, I wasn't really close to science professors. I didn't really have a mentor, honestly. I kind of just fumbled my way through it. But the one thing that really helped look at my personal statement was I went to UC Davis for undergrad, and they have a place there where they have people who majored in comparative literature or English. And so I actually had some much older gentleman who was very good at writing papers. He looked at mine and he pretty much fixed the whole thing with me. We went through it together and we did multiple drafts. So it was the best resource that I had on campus at that time. So definitely look on campus, whatever school, whatever college or high school that you go to, and find someone who actually writes very well that can look over your paper.
Yeah, we can put our emails in the chat, and you can feel free to reach out to us. And yeah, I would also say that Mi Mentor is a good resource, and that again, it doesn't have to be someone in medical or science fields, but just having different perspectives, both from people who know you well and people who have the skills, the writing skills to help you, can be good resources.
Yes, to add on to that, locally, I went to Fresno State for undergrad, and I was part of the HCOP program. And at Fresno State, they have writing lab, I believe that's what it's called. All my papers went through that writing lab. So I met with people there because English is my third language. So I sat down with them, including my personal statement. Somebody read through it, made sure it made sense, did any sort of correction and helped me out. And then I fortunately was part of the scribe program at St. Agnes at that point. So the people in front of me who had graduated from the scribe program and were going into med school, they sort of became my mentors at that time. I am currently working on creating a mentorship program for Fresno State with HCOP. It will not be up and running till spring session, and it will be very small when it starts, but something I am currently working on with Lilia there to get it up and running for this specific reason, so we can help the fourth year students who are going to be applying to medical school through the application process and set them with mentors in the community. So something to look forward to, hopefully, once it's up and running. What other questions we have here? Maybe if you can talk a little bit about, I think you guys, tell us a little bit about your challenges when you were applying to medical school yourself, what you thought were your weaknesses and your strengths that you sort of looked at or you questioned when you were applying to medical school. I think that comes up all the time. People worry about extracurricular activities, they worry about research, they worry about taking a gap year, anything that's pertinent to you or you thought might have been a weakness but ended up turning out to be a strength that you sort of mentioned in your application and have noticed now that you're in medical school.
So I think for me, one thing I noticed was I had gone to a small liberal arts college, and I had chose that, because I thought it fit me the best. And when it came down to it, I thought applying to medical school, that was going to make the biggest difference, and that they were going to judge me for going to the smallest college that not even people in my own town that I was living at knew about. And so I definitely looked at it as a downside to something on my application. But when it came to it, it's like Dr. Banh was saying, the admissions committee wants to know who you are and what makes you tick, what makes you want to go into medicine, and why why you feel like you fit that program, not necessarily what college you went to. I mean, it can have an influence to a certain degree, but it's not a make or break deal. So I think, if you are a high school student looking at, colleges, that would be when you're making the decision, it's not going to make or break the fact that you're going to get into medical school. It's going to be who you are, that is going to make you the doctor that you are and get you into medical school, essentially.
I'm going to echo that. I think in college, I focused too much on what other people were doing who were pre-med. So I always I had my own vision and my own passions, but I was afraid if I was being misled or if I didn't have enough direction. So I just wanted to echo that whatever your passions are, just follow them. I ended up not doing any research in undergrad. I did a lot of community service and community engagement projects. And when I was applying to medical school, UCSF was a reach school for me because it's the #1 funded NIH research institute. So I had my reservations. I didn't think I would get in, but it just like apply broadly, and schools love diversity in every field, regardless of whether you have research or community experience or your or diversity in other fields. So just be honest with yourself and follow your own passions and do activities that make you happy, and it will show on your application and it'll make you a stronger candidate.
Thank you, guys. Cynthia has her hand raised, so I'm gonna let Cynthia ask a question and then we'll go through some of the questions in the Q&A. Cynthia, I'm gonna allow you to talk. Please go ahead and ask your question.
Hello, everyone. My name is Cynthia Roscoe. I am a current fourth year at UC Merced. I'm a public health major with a writing minor, and I'm also pre-med route. So I'm very excited to be here and listen to your guys' story. My question to you all is, if you had to stay home and especially right now in the middle of a pandemic, I know for myself and many other students, we had to return back home, and sometimes it's unstable to a certain extent. And my question now is, how did you guys manage to manage extracurriculars, medical school application, and your success in the institution, and also family responsibilities? How did that come? How did you manage to balance and also have time for self-care?
They're all miserable, so they have nothing to say.
I know.
They're all miserable.
Wait, is this like before medical school, or are we talking about during medical school?
Yeah, before medical school, learning how to manage and really find that balance in between personal responsibilities in regard to family responsibilities and meeting people's needs, as well as your own academically and even socially.
Okay, I guess I can answer this. I think one downfall of like all of us wanting to go into like medicine is that we love taking care of other people at the expense of our own. And I think that no matter how long, like how far we are in our journey, we still are learning self-care all the time. I think for me, before medical school, I used to make excuses all the time, like, oh, I don't have time to do that. I don't have time to do that. I'm studying. But the truth was I really studying? I was maybe studying 25% of time, 75% I was watching like TV, and that was when like Netflix just came out, and you know, like YouTube was like pretty cool. So you know, like I learned though that eventually it's like how you set your priorities, what's important to you, how do you get it done, how do you hold yourself accountable for those things? Because at the end of the day, you need to learn how to be flexible, and that there is actually time. You just have to make time for it. But granted, you can't do 100 things in a day. Like you have to live day by day, because if you look too far into the future, it gets so overwhelming that the fear you have can actually paralyze you from getting anything done. So I recommend that like don't like plan out your day like by hour to hour, you know, like that can drive you crazy. I couldn't do that. But what I made sure every day when I woke up in the morning was like, what are like 3 to 5 things that I want to accomplish today, and I'm going to make sure that I do them and I get them done. Because what's worse than, you know, getting everything done is it like getting everything done but like halved, you know, like just like not putting like 100% effort into anything that you're doing, right? So it's really like you got to take a step back, figure out what your priorities are, pick 3 to 5 things that you want to do each day and you want to accomplish it, and either have like, and then have someone hold you accountable for it, whether it's your parents, your best friend, someone who's also in the same like journey that you're going through. You know, it's very important to have friends who are like-minded, who's also going through the same thing you're doing, because those are the only people that truly understand everything that you're going through. And I felt like that, just reminding myself that really kept me centered, really kept me moving forward.
And I think something that helped my perspective was realizing that you don't have to choose like academics over family, family over academics all the time. Like, I don't think that's something that's possible, but what you can do is realize that sometimes there's going to be things in your academics that are like really important in that moment. And you just have to be honest with your other responsibilities, your family, and say, I need to get this done first. And sometimes it'll be something that's really important in your family, and you have to be honest and ask for help if you need more time for an assignment, more time for some school responsibility. So I think it's always going to be a mix of what's most important at that time. But like Pong was saying, just being able to have your priorities for each kind of area of your life.
to add to that, I feel like doing extracurriculars that actually ground you can really help. So even though you are spending time and doing extracurricular work, but if that's something that makes me happy and rejuvenates me, it's time well spent, and I use that as like a mental health break rather than I think of it as an activity. That's why I emphasis on doing activities that you actually enjoy, be it playing basketball in like a sports league or like playing music or whatever you want to do. Everything has a connection to health, at least mental health. So you can frame it from that perspective if that helps. And I mentioned in the chat, there's a thing called SMART goals. So when you write your goals, you can use that framework. I never did that before med school, but now when I do, I'm like, is this really realistic? Am I being like, can I achieve this? And having a specific thing for your goal, like when do you want to achieve by, can actually really help.
That's awesome, guys. I think, yeah, that was one of the biggest things I struggled with as well. It was always, it's the good balance between not feeling guilty when you have to stay home and do the work that you're required to do, and then also not feeling guilty when you have to leave your academic work to go spend time with family. I think that something might stay with you for a long time till you figure it out that, it's okay to choose one over the other or have time for each assigned, basically. So sometimes you're going to be so busy studying that you won't be able to give time to family. And then sometimes your family will need you and your studies will have to take a break. And that's life, unfortunately, and or fortunately, and you just have to figure out how that works in your schedule, your life schedule. And it will come with time. And we're still figuring this out. I promise you, I still struggle with it every day. I'm sure Dr. Banh has figured it out, but everybody else struggles. I'm just kidding. Yes. I think to continue with that, I think a lot of people are also asking, I think one of the biggest things that are happening with COVID is that people aren't able to do things that they wanted to do. The extracurricular activities they want to be part of, such as getting a medical experience or shadowing a doctor or volunteering at a hospital. They're unable to do those things at this point. And the question that's come up a lot throughout these series is, what can they do instead? And how is that going to affect their application? And how's that going to look?
You want me to comment on that? Sounds like a my question kind of thing.
Yes.
Okay. Well, of course, we are well aware there's a little thing called a pandemic when we're talking about applications and what's going on. So everything from, I don't know if you know, but UCSF announced they're not going to be looking at MCATs, for instance, are not going to be used in the first two phases of admissions, which is going to be the first time we've ever done that. And part of that is because looking at holistic applications. Part of that is to understand that some people have been unable to take the MCAT or been delayed because of various pandemic reasons. Same thing goes with volunteering. I know it's in the chat and the email about volunteering opportunities. Even I run Mobile Heal. Part of my thing for running the free clinic was actually to let pre-med students and medical students and residents have more opportunities to do clinical exposure, clinical learning, so they could get that experience that I never had when I was a student at the same point. That's been severely limited, absolutely, with the pandemic. We hope very shortly, like for instance, research is another one where we have a lot of research opportunities, but they've been sort of put on hold. Now, actually, we are officially last week reopening most non-COVID related studies, and then we'll be bringing back research volunteers, but mostly those who are already on projects first. The ones who are working already, we got to start by getting the people who are working on projects back onto the projects before we can start looking at other projects and students and stuff like that. So we are well aware that's a problem nationwide. So it's not a problem just for Valley kids, it's a problem for everywhere, but particularly here. And we're doing our best to try to start opening those opportunities, but we have to do it safely, of course. We have to make sure that we're not increasing the spread of COVID. Same thing happens with UCSF right now is not allowing shadowing or volunteering on our sites. But for instance, we use community-based organizations with with the COVID equity project I work on, and they are using volunteers. So I have my students volunteering through my sites and my outreach, so that there's opportunities for them to go work with us, but through our larger community organizations instead of specifically through UCSF. But at least it's still getting a chance to work with the doctors and helping us with getting care. Part of my thing is also with Mobile Heal and CEP is not just the opportunities, but it's about getting access to culturally competent care and understanding like underserved medicine. And we have burnout medicine. I mentioned it for the residents, but Suki's never burned out. She's one that survived. So there's a few that make it out alive, but not. We'll see about Brandon. He's still got a little bit more to go. So a few more years to go. He's holding up pretty well so far. But you know, but the thing about it is also seeing that, like, when you do these things that are, you taking care of patients that are difficult, non-compliance, things that we use all the time in medicine, but understanding that, like, those words are sometimes also laced with undertones of structural racism. There's judgments and there's countertransference. There's other things that lead to you having burnout, you not being a good physician, truthfully. So it's all about not just taking care of underserved, but like having opportunities to take care of people in a culturally competent way that's actually rewarding to the patient and to you. Sorry, that's not directly answering the question about opportunities, but I do say that's really important, that it's not just about having opportunities, but it's about having the right ones.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Bond. That is actually really helpful. I'm gonna there's two people who have their hands up, so I'm gonna allow Corinne to go ahead and talk. Go ahead, Corinne.
Hi. So I was very moved by your story, Kenny. And I just kind of wanted to ask, I think somebody else asked about like domestic violence, and I'm a survivor of like all kinds of abuse myself, and I have like, PTSD from that. And I'm actually very afraid, to be honest, of disclosing that. And then part of me is like, well, they want to know the full me and stuff like that. And at the same time, I am scared because I know there's a stigma, and also about being an applicant with disabilities. And I was wondering if you guys have any, anything that you would like to kind of share about that. Like about, I don't know, maybe like your perspective, like if you feel like those kind of stigmas are still very prevalent and things like that.
Thank you for sharing, Corinne. I just want to make sure the students have a chance to share. I don't want to dominate the conversation.
I thank you for sharing that, Corinne, and for confiding in us kind of this information that is very personal to you. I think one thing that I could comment on is I did have classmates in medical school that had similar experiences, and that had said that they had gone through this situation where they were afraid to open up with those experiences to either faculty or mentors or classmates. But ultimately, I think when they did come out and share those experiences, it gave them almost a platform to speak to either patients or to help to do something that worked in other people's lives that were right alongside them. And so when you are ready, or if you decide to share, know that these stigmas don't necessarily they're not necessarily going to cause you harm per se. It actually might make a difference in someone's life that you come into contact with. A specific scenario that I can remember is working in a student-run clinic at UC Davis, and one of my classmates that who had experienced domestic violence opened up with a patient and ended up working with that patient to take the next steps to become removed from the situation that was actually harmful to themselves. And so that story that is part of your life story actually might make a difference in a patient that you come in contact with in the future. And so when you are ready, that is something that might be very powerful for the future.
Yeah, I find students are often, or applicants, I apologize if I cut anyone off, I'll be brief, just that people are very open about things like my history of cancer, or I had childhood leukemia, because they feel there's not stigma or fault in it. But in things like domestic violence, in particular with mental health disease, those are super common where there's a lot of stigma involved in it, or people are scared to come open with it. So I do think as a medical professionals, we do our best. I think it can be as Brandon mentioned, can hopefully make it empowering when you feel like you're ready for it. You shouldn't be forced. You have to be at the point that you can do it. But I apologize, I cut somebody off.
Yeah, so just echoing off of what Dr. Banh is saying, I think that, you know, when you do apply for medical school or anything really, you get to choose what you want to talk about. You know, no one's forcing you to say anything that you don't want to. And you should only talk about, you know, those vulnerable parts of you when you're ready, when you can articulate it and figure out what you've learned from it. Because most of the time when you do present yourself to someone, they're going to ask you, like, what did you learn from it? You know, what have you done to change your life moving forward? And that can be very hard, especially in your situation where you may still be working out, you know, many things in your life. And let me tell you, I'm 27 and I still don't know where I'm going in life. And it's really hard, and you'll never know where you're going, but at least you have an idea of what you want in life and you keep going for it. So Corinne, I think that, you know, when you are ready and you're able to really form your thought about what you want to share, it will come from the heart and it will never be stigmatized. No one will ever look you differently. I have like a colleague right now who's actually been deferring multiple years, meaning like she's actually a class above me. She was a class with me, but now she's a class below me now because she's going through a neurological disease right now. And she's been in and out of the hospital for a very long time. And so our school, UC Davis, is like very understanding, very forgiving. Her disease is not a stigma at all. They are trying to find ways to work with her because they want her to succeed. And just like with you, Corinne, you know, like whatever school accepts you, they understand like your value and your worth, and it will not be a stigma.
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys for sharing that. There's another individual who has a hands up, so I'm going to ask them to go ahead and ask their question. So Natalie, I'm going to allow you to talk. Go ahead and ask your question, please.
Hi, can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Hi. First, I just wanted to take a moment to say that I'm really proud of you, Corinne. I struggle with mental health as well, or I struggle with mental health, which is different than what you struggle with. But coming from one student to another, I'm immensely proud of you and proud of you for speaking up on this. So I know everybody here probably is, but I just want you to know that we hear you and we're proud of you. I actually had a question about being a low-income student. In case you can't tell from my accent, I am from the South, but I am a low-income student. No one in my family is associated with medicine in any way. I'm a first-generation college student, so I have no like connections or anything like that. And I'm in my junior year of college looking at med schools. I was just wondering, based on all the amazing stories that y'all have said, if there was any advice you could offer just to help me and maybe some other people just increase our confidence. I feel like I've really been struggling because everyone around me already has like this very concrete plan. And I feel like my plan is very much like, because I'm Christian, it's like where God leads me, that is my plan. So I just, I'm preparing in the best way I know how, but I was just wondering if you had anything or any stories about confidence that you could share. So thank you.
I will let the students talk first and then we'll go from there.
I'm just gonna say really quickly, like I'm also a Christian too, Natalie, and I feel like I don't want to, you know, talk about religion in front of everybody. It may make other people uncomfortable, but if you ever want to message me directly, we can definitely talk more about that and how it played a role in my life, and maybe that can help you kind of figure out where you're going to.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I'll mention that we have, I talked to a lot of low income applicants who don't apply to medical school because they don't think they can afford it and they get scared off by these giant numbers. And the interesting thing is that the way most of the financial aid, I was telling, like UC takes 2/3 of your tuition, shuttles it back into financial aid. It's given back as in need-based aid automatically. That's how UC's systems work. So it's like, that's why I went to Penn. Honestly, I was the poor kid that went for free because all the other kids got paid tuition so I could go. So all I had to do was, work at the dorm so I could live and eat for free, but I didn't pay tuition really to go there, but most people don't even know. And I would have never thought I could afford it. And then I was like, $40,000 was like crazy a year. And it was like, oh, for me, it's 2,000. I was like, really? That's what's just going on. It cost me more to go to my local state school, it cost me. So as I tell people that just apply broadly, and that does take a little bit of money for the application process, but that you'll be surprised that, the way schools are looking, certain schools in particular, that you'd be surprised at what people have to offer.
I also wanted to mention that there are programs that can support you in applying to medical school, including the fee assistance program, where you can apply to 15 medical schools for free if you are from a low income household. And for college, for medical school too, there are need-based scholarships as well. So UCSF does a need and academic-based scholarship. So they combine like both like your academic record and the need-based and come up with a general number. So even if you have low stats but you have higher need, you might end up getting something similar to someone who had 4.0, but like they had lower needs. So definitely programs like that. And also in medical school, your initial financial aid package might not be what you will be getting for the rest of the medical school career. So for example, I got a scholarship during my second year that is paying for third, fourth, and fifth year. So it's a $25,000 scholarship, which I had not initially received in my first like financial aid package. So there are opportunities throughout medical school to increase your financial aid amount as well.
That's awesome. Something I didn't even know about. That's pretty good.
Thank y'all so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Natalie, for asking your question. Appreciate it. Okay, so there's some questions in the chat. Does anyone know if UCSF will have the MCAT optional during next cycle, 2022? I don't know if anybody would know that.
From my personal sources, as a medical student, I don't think they have released that yet. I think they're still waiting on how the pandemic will play out in the next couple months, but that's not official. So I would like go on their website and search if they do have that on there, but I don't think they have it on there yet. I think it's pretty early.
Yep.
I'll go with the officially, we don't know yet.
I love it. Yes. Do you have any tips on how to stay motivated when it comes to schoolwork? And we can just add on to that, how to deal with imposter syndrome during your pre-med journey and into the future.
Sorry, go ahead. I was just going to mention that imposter syndrome never leaves you. So regardless of where you are in your career, it's going to hover over you. It's going to come unexpectedly. You just like learn to get better and process it better and deal with it better, but it's always present. I constantly battle it. Even like before my step exams, even like in MPH, I'm always stressed. I think it's just like I'm getting better at appraising my stress responses. I'm getting better at processing things than I was in the past. So I just wanted to mention that if you are feeling overwhelmed, it's completely normal. Even like the best of doctors feel overwhelmed, like, few times a day, if not more. And to answer the question of motivation, I think for me, it was always about what things grounded me and humbled me. For me, it was always hanging out with family, doing things that brought me joy with them. like it could be like my parents don't speak English, so reading letters for them, like paying their bills, something that I consider my responsibilities, but also it brought me joy to interact with them. And also interacting with the community. I think it's in medical school, you're too consumed in the books. You forget the bigger picture, why you are in medicine. There are a few times in medical school when I actually reread my personal statement to like refocus and think like, what's the bigger aim? Why am I doing this? And so yeah, like just interacting with the community and grounding yourself through things that you're passionate about can definitely help. Personal recommendation, sometimes medical school classmates overwhelmed me. So I had friends outside of medical school that really mitigated that stress for me.
Okay, so dealing with imposter syndrome, I'm pretty open about my own mental health. Also, I'm applying to psychiatry, so I'm very passionate about mental health. To be honest, I'm still going through it, but the difference between who I was before and who I am now is that I know how to deal with it. Because before I used to compartmentalize everything and be like, I'll just deal with it later. I'll just deal with it later. It's temporary suppression, but then it's like everything builds up and then you explode and you go crazy. And that was me. And so I think it was like the next step of like addressing like my problem, because I couldn't really find people who understood where I was coming from. And like, just like what Anu was saying is that like you end up having, like even through college or even to medical school, everyone's going through the same thing you're doing. And if you're all kind of together all the time, 24/7, it just actually makes things a little bit worse. And so you kind of want to step away from that and kind of find where you are. And so how I did that was like, I started going to therapy. And our school at UC Davis actually offers like a psychiatrist and a psychologist, and it's like free. And you can go, however often you need to go. And I've been using those services ever since I started medical school. And I've learned to love myself. And when you love yourself, you kind of find out that you become more confident in the things that you do. And like sometimes you are faking until you make it. Sometimes every day is not perfect, but I've learned that, hey, I'm actually really good at certain things, and I'm very passionate about what I want to do. And those are the things that are going to continue to, push me forward. And if you need help with that, also considering finding some kind of help too.
Yeah, imposter syndrome, never going to go away for me, I'm pretty sure. I've struggled with it throughout pretty much all parts of my life, and continue to struggle with it. But one thing I've learned is that, working with very supportive mentors and colleagues, they will tell you where your strengths are. And you sort of sometimes, it's really pulling you down, you just have to look at that. And you have to realize that you made it this far because you had it in you to make it this far. And it was not, maybe there was some luck involved, but there was also something that you deserved and the hard work that you put into it. So always think of that to go back into, because I know it can be, sometimes you really can doubt yourself a lot and let go of opportunities that can potentially be very, very, very beneficial for you. So always make sure to, when it comes to those opportunities, to always take a step back and look at yourself and give yourself that chance to take on that opportunity or whatever that's ahead of you, and not say no to it just because you're afraid. Sometimes you just have to try to get a yes from somebody. And I would say just totally try that. That happened to me applying to this residency. I almost didn't apply to UCSF Fresno because I didn't think I was good enough to get in. And here I am. So I took that risk and it worked out. So totally, that's all I have to say about imposter syndrome. Let's talk a little bit about, I know we're running out of time. Let's talk about maybe a little bit about our professions in the residency that we chose, or the field of medicine that we chose to go into, or you're deciding to go into. Why is that? What made you choose those specialties?
I guess I'll start with this one. So I chose internal medicine. Specifically because of the broad nature of the field and the career, but also because I'm interested in pulmonary critical care, which gives me the opportunity to basically see kind of like the sickest patients of the sick patients in the hospital, but also the flexibility to also work with patients in the outpatient setting and have my own clinic to see patients that that would need to be seen for procedural medicine or what have it. So I think one thing is it's something that I was interested in, but it also allowed me to continue with my goals and aspirations in medicine, which is work with patients here in the Central Valley, which is one reason why I ended up staying here for internal medicine, and then hopefully for pulmonary critical care as well. But I think, the big thing, just to note off, my story of why I picked internal medicine, was it allowed me to continue to do exactly what I had set out to do when I was applying to medical school, is work with underserved populations that don't have the greatest access to medical care, and to work to promote the highest quality of care for those patients. And that's essentially what I'm on my way to do. And so hopefully I'm doing it right now as well.
Time will only tell, Brandon.
I wasn't sure if Dr. Peterson is still on. He's still listening to everything.
Oh, this is what motivates me. You kidding me? This is why I've been doing this for 40 years. This is great.
Other students want to touch base on their specialty choices or their changes of specialty choices even?
Yeah, I can speak on, actually Pong and I, being in our last year of med school, just submitted our applications over the weekend. So into residency. So I'm applying into pediatrics. It's been something I've been interested in as long as I've been interested in medicine. Just the idea of getting to work with children from the beginning, to work along with their families and their caregivers and help to create changes early on in life. And I feel that in pediatrics, there's also a lot of enthusiasm for being involved outside of just the medicine, or what you might classically think is just the medicine part of it, but being involved in all parts of the child's life. So looking ahead to residency, I'm really interested in seeing how I can get more involved in being a part of community engagement and having those skills to really make changes for a patient and their community.
Yeah, see, Crystal, she's already ready for interviews. So for me, it's like, long story short, I intended to go, I started all over the place. I thought I was going to go into like OB-GYN because I did some like research at UCSF main campus before I started medical school. And I was like, yes, I want to help with reproduction. I want to help couples who can't have children have children. And then I was like, oh no, this is not what I like. I don't like the medicine. And then I was like, okay, what do I like? And I really, really love surgery. And I was going to go in it. I was all gung-ho about it early this year. I had like my letters of recommendation ready, my personal statement ready. And then I started the rotation. I've already been in surgery rotation before, but in fourth year, you have to take additional rotations in that specialty if you're interested in it. And like, I was 3 days into it and I was like, Dr. Banh, this is not what I want to do with my life. And I was like, help me, please. I was like, can I come to your house right now? I know it's COVID, can I come to your house? And so I like literally, huh?
You did come to my house.
Yeah.
We sat in the backyard, socially distant.
Yes, with mask. Yes. And I drove to Dr. Bahn's house. I've never been there before. And I just like let myself in. And I was just like, I don't think this is what I want to do in my life anymore. And I thought about like what was important to me, what were my values. And it was like family super important to me. Longitudinal care, like taking care of patients for a long time is what I really enjoy. I really enjoy having conversations, listening to people's narratives, seeing them grow, right? Because I have become so self-aware of myself and my own growth. I wanted to help others too. And I was like, surgery isn't where I'm supposed to be. And I did really well in my psychiatry rotation. I loved it so much. I loved working with the kids. And I was like, this is where I'm going. I want to do child psychiatry. So I've like made a decision that I want to apply for pediatrics and psychiatry together, because just like Crystal, I really, really enjoy kiddos. I didn't realize how good I was with them. And I think especially for me from Merced, California, it's a very small rural town, but there's lack of physicians, lack of physicians and specialties. I think for me to be like trained in pediatrics, adult psychiatry, and child psychiatry will definitely help a long way in terms of being able to, fulfill the needs of my community. And so that's my idea in terms of 10 years from now. I want to work for the underserved. I want to be in a small rural town, and I want to help as many people as possible.
This is a girl from Merced County. That Merced County only has one licensed psychiatrist in the entire county and 0 child psychiatrists. So that's what we talk about when we're talking about the mission of Prime.
I'll briefly mention mine too, I guess. I'm taking a gap year. So the reason why I'm taking a gap year is because I really wanted to understand like the social and macro level indicators for health. I think in medical school, we really focus on individual health and how to treat the symptoms and the illness in an acute setting or within the hospital setting. But we don't really address as much as I would have liked the social factors, social determinants of health. And that's one of the main reasons why I am doing my master's in public health, because I want to know avenues how I can help patients outside of the medical setting. I wanted to learn what places patients at the risk of those risks that they come in with. Because for heart disease, we're always like, oh, hypertension, like that's a risk factor, but actually what causes them to have high blood pressure. So that's part of the reason why I am doing my master's in public health, and I'm interested in social emergency medicine. So I'll be applying into emergency medicine next cycle, but I'll be doing my rotation in Fresno next year. So I look forward to seeing everyone there again.
That's awesome. Not that I'm biased, not at all. I can share my story a little bit. I moved from India when I was 16 years old, and my family went through a couple of experiences while we were in India that sort of helped me decide to go into emergency medicine. It was basically when they needed the care or the help, they couldn't get it because we didn't have the money to be able to go through those treatment options or operations. And when I moved to US, I realized emergency medicine here, the goal and the idea behind it is that we serve you regardless of where you come from and if you have financial support, if you have the finance for it or not. And that was something that was a biggest thing for me, to be able to provide that care for an individual when they need it the most, and not ask for their insurance or if they're going to be able to afford it or not. I do understand, afterwards that they might get a huge bill and that there's other effects that happen onto their life. But I just wanted to make sure that at that vulnerable time and place for that particular individual, I was there for them. And another thing with emergency medicine was it's so wide, and it's like things walk through that door still till now where I'm like, well, I'm very young. I'm pretty sure Dr. Banh will tell us. Like, I have just been doing this for like 5 years, right? What do I know? And I'm just like, yep, never heard of that before. I have never seen this before. I have no idea how to treat this. And then I have my colleagues like Dr. Banh and somebody who's been doing it for a long time, and they have seen it, or sometimes they have not seen it. And that's just something that keeps you on your toes, and you have to keep learning. And that's just medicine in general. That's not just emergency medicine. That's any field you go into medicine. Learning never stops. And I think that was one of the things that attracted me to medicine, period. It was a lifetime learning, like going to school your whole life, which I actually quite enjoy. I think we're 11 minutes over our time now. So I apologize for taking everybody's time. Thank you for sticking around and answering all the questions. I really do appreciate for everybody joining us, all the presenters today, and sharing your stories, and also all the attendees and sharing their personal stories. That's pretty amazing. And I'm pretty sure that's helped quite a few people who are here today. We have put our emails down, and we are on our website, and I'll have Summer also send an email out with all, at least it seems like the Prime students are interested, and I'll put my email down. Be patient with us, because sometimes we might not be able to get back to you right away, but we'll try our best for sure. Thank you for joining us for these 6 weeks. I had lots of fun. Hopefully you guys had lots of fun and learned a lot. And hopefully I'll see some of you next year, or see you here as resident physicians or medical students rotating through. That would be pretty awesome.
And thank you, Suki, Dr. Dillon. We appreciate you being our wonderful program director and putting this together. This is so special. I mean, I'm so excited that we got to do this virtually. I mean, we love to be in person, we would rather, but I mean, ultimately having this audience from across the United States, from around the world is so spectacular and so incredible. And I think this was so helpful. So thank all the panelists for being here. We really appreciate you taking the time and being very candid. I think it helps a lot. So thank you very much. And I won't keep you. I know you're all very busy, but for those that want to stick around for the raffle, I'm going to do that right now. So there are going to be 10 people that we select through my random name generator. It's a real thrill, I promise. So whoever wants to stay can stay. But I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and we'll pick 10 names. Let me tell you how this is going to work. So we're going to pick 10 names out of about 130 that submitted. And those winners, I'm going to send a link and you're going to be able to choose your prize this year. So whereas in past, we've decided on what you get to take home with you, you're going to have to choose from a selection. I think we have a stethoscope, a couple of really fantastic books. What was it? The anatomy coloring book. That's really cool. Yeah, there are a lot of great options. So you get to decide, pick your own adventure on this one. So let me go ahead and share my screen and we will pick our winners.
Thank you, Summers. Thank you, Suki.
Thank you, Dr. Banh.
Thank you, Dr. Bond.
Have a nice evening. Enjoy your time off a little bit. Bye.
Pleasure.
Okay, Dr. Dillon, can you see my screen here? Am I showing it?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, here we go. You ready? Woo-hoo. And Dr. Dillon, if you can just check and make sure that that person is here with us right now, whoever this winner is.
Okay.
And I will write them down. Okay, Amelia Guzman, are you here?
Let's see. Amelia, you wait.
And feel free to chime in if you're a winner.
I'm
Not here?
gonna see them. I don't think they're here anymore. Nope.
Okay, here we go to the next one. Okay, Falake Oladel. Sorry for the butchering.
Still here.
Yes?
Yep. They're here.
Great.
Yep.
We need music. We need a drum roll. We need something right now.
Music. Maybe one of
Mariana Aribe Rodriguez, are you here?
Let me see. Mariana. No, they're not.
Oh, honestly.
I know.
We're gonna be here all night.
I know. Or we just, anybody whose name comes up, we can get them, get connected to them via email.
I can, definitely. Okay, let's go for Alison Moreno.
Yes, they're here.
Congratulations. Okay. So that gives me 4.
Yes.
Miriam Kieran.
Let's see, Miriam. They're here.
Wonderful. Congratulations, Miriam. Don't worry, I will reach out to all of these people after the program, probably tomorrow. Don't look for it tonight. I'll get to you tomorrow. Savannah, are you here?
Yep.
Woohoo! And let me tell you, these prizes, they're going to be fantastic, and we will be able to ship them to your house no matter where you are, so not to worry.
Yes, that's the plan.
Okay, Cynthia.
Let's see,
I
Cynthia.
know you were on here earlier, but
Yeah, they're here.
wonderful. Congratulations. Okay, 3 more big winners. Da, 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 da. Okay, Zuhidi Del Rio Contreras.
They're still here.
Wonderful. Okay, how many more do we have, Suki? Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 2 more winners. Okay, Yimeng Li.
Let's see. Yep. they're here.
Wonderful. Congratulations. And our final big mini med school winner. Bring. Da-da-da-da. Maybe Jonathan Tang.
Jonathan Tang. Yep, they're here.
Yay. Congratulations, everyone. Okay, so that's 10 people. I'm going to stop my share now. It's so fun, isn't it? I just love it.
Yeah.
Okay. So thank you everyone for participating in Mini Med School, the 9th installment. I think this one was incredibly fun. I think for future, we're hoping to do both a Mini Med School spring boot camp. So look for information on that. If you are on my mailing list, you will receive information about that. But come back, check our website, see what we're up to. And who knows what other mini med school installments will be in the works after this one, because we loved it so much. And even when we go back to becoming an in-person program, I plan to make this a hybrid program where we have both a virtual component, so we can have all of you that want to attend from outside of the Valley, along with you folks that live here in our community. So don't worry, it's still going to be accessible for all of you. So thank you so much for being a part of this. It was incredibly special, and we will see you soon.
Yes.
Thanks, Dr. Dillon. Thank you so much, Anu, everyone, for participating.
Thank you, Summer.
Have a good night. Thanks, everyone.